to get started, I know that film was made, or at least finished, about 2 years ago, if I have that timeline right?
3.
3?
Yeah,
oh my gosh.
I was looking for the file to send it to you, actually. Sorry about that. And it was June of 2023.
Okay,
so
nice, amazing. So 3 years ago, and I'm wondering what the impact of this film has been like. Have you had any reflections about the importance of queer representation since the film was made?
Yeah, honestly, I haven't watched it in a while. I was gonna watch it yesterday just to like refresh myself, and then I was like, nope, I'm gonna watch it with everybody else. And it's funny because everybody in that video is still like doing the thing, with the exception of Goldie, who's moved away to go back to school. But yeah, when it first came out, it like a lighthouse kind of shone on the community, and you know, a lot of people realized, oh yes, we are here, we need to build community, we need to do the thing. And then life happened, and I didn't have the energy of like making the film. I'm not a filmmaker. It was actually at the premiere of that where somebody called me a filmmaker, and I was like, excuse me, and they were like, you just made a film, dude. Like, and so I got a little bit overwhelmed, and I didn't really have the spoons to carry the Lavender Lighthouse in the way that I wanted to, and have it be a vessel to build community. But I've obviously still kept in touch, and through Friar Tuck's, like, lots of queer folks just happen to find me. Word of mouth gets around, especially in a rural community. So I've been kind of individually like keeping contact with people. And then about a year ago, we sort of revived the Lavender Lighthouse. We did a fundraiser at a event last year to raise money for what we didn't realize would be our first Pride that's gonna be this June. So we are like knee-deep in planning that right now and stuff. So really kind of what it did a few years ago was make us aware of each other and make us aware of the need for community. And now in this time and space, like that is rolling forward, and yeah, it's happening.
Amazing. Yeah, that's so exciting. It's gonna be great. And I wanted to mention to all of you, I have a couple questions prepared, and then I'll open it up. So just to give you a chance if you wanted to think about things to ask Kylee. On Thursday, we had our first performance of the 2026 festival, and during the artist panel, Judith Rose, who was one of the musicians, was sharing that rural queers are doing the work. They're building community, they're showing up for their neighbors, they're doing the sorts of things we will need to do to survive ongoing fascism. And so I'm wondering if you could talk about what it's like and how it has been to build intentional queer community in Utah.
Yeah, it has been pretty different. So the way that I found myself in queer community in Salt Lake was so different. I became a business owner through opening Friar Tuck's, and just like met all of these folks with, you know, ACLU and the Utah Pride Center. And now that I'm removed from it, the word that it feels appropriate is like indulgent. The community here was so indulgent and available, and like you could pick and choose different varieties and flavors. And where I'm at, that's just not the case. It is. But what it reminds me of, we keep calling the Pride event that we're planning like punk rock Pride, which it's not really, but it is very like grassroots. It reminds me a lot of the first Prides that I was going to here in like 2006, and you know, it was like very different. And you do see the work in a much more like tangible way, just because we have so few resources. Just because of like there are so few of us that are doing the work. And so really getting to see people kind of flourish. I checked with Cami that it was okay that I chatted about her a little bit, but Cami was in the video with her wife, and choosing to even be a part of that video. They're both teachers in Carbon County, and it was a genuine, even like on the day of filming, it was a genuine conversation of like, is this safe to do? Is this gonna be an okay thing for our job? Mm-hmm. And now fast forward 3 years, and Cami is on our Pride planning committee. She keeps asking me, even though she's older than me, to like send her like queer pop culture things, because she, as she reflected in the video, even in being in a lesbian relationship, was so closeted that like doesn't know the music, doesn't know the movies, doesn't, like watch the L Word but barely, and all these things. And so it's really lovely to see. A lot of people say like, oh, this is so great that you're doing it for the kids, and I am. Like, I have my little queer teenagers that like just want to feel seen in my barbershop, and I love creating that space for them. But there are queer elders in Carbon County that have never had the opportunity to exist comfortably and legitimately. And I'm not saying that I did it, but like me being just so, I can't be invisible now. Like I made myself so loud and comfortable being visible that I just can't. But I've now had those queer elders in my community come and say like, thank you, because now like I think if I walk down the street, holding a woman's hand, like it'll be fine. And so yeah, it's just been really special to see folks that are from that community and feel connected to that community. For a long time growing up there, I just thought that it wasn't for me. And I think I can remember as a kid looking around at the Boat Cliff Mountains and just being like, ew, these are big tan dumb hills, ew. And I'm there now, and like, it will take my breath away sometimes, just like going around a corner and the sun is hitting them just right. And I'm like, no, I do belong here. I don't have to go somewhere else to find home. Like, I'm home. And sort of like reclaiming that in a way, and watching the folks in the film and even just the folks that were impacted by the film kind of start to feel that way and like own their space as well. It's been awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think as you're reflecting, it's reminding me that in 2019, the first Queer Spectra, I was an artist, but I asked them not to tag me on Instagram or Facebook, and I didn't use my last name, and I was very much not outside of a small group of friends. But then the original founders of Queer Spectra sort of opened up a space for me to find community, me to feel supported, and now like my name is publicly on the website, and it means a lot to have queer people making these spaces, and there's a lot of openness to that.
And I think the safety is such a big part too. Like, I have this conversation in the political space in Carbon County where it's like, if you stop oppressing marginalized folks, we will bring beautiful things to the table. And once you feel that sense of safety, then you can put that, kind of behind you and then do the things that you do, however it is. And like, there's just so much more juiciness to it when it's that way, so.
You started to go into this, but I know that any community has multiple leaders, facilitators, people who are bringing, the first Pride together. So I'm wondering if you want to shout out any of these other people that are doing work with you.
Totally. So I'm from Carbon County, but I left when I was like 11 or 12 or so I was gone for a long time. I lived in Salt Lake for 20 plus years and just moved back in 2021. And at that time, there was like an event being held. It was called Helper Saturday Vibes, and it wasn't a Pride specific event. It happened like twice a month during the summer. And one of their events in June, they would always do like make it Pride themed. So we just kind of hitched onto that, and we're doing that. But even before that, I want to say like in 2017 or 2018, somebody who's from Carbon County, their name is Tommy, they had the first, what I would consider the first Carbon County Pride, which was really just like a lake day with a bunch of queer folks like hanging out and having a picnic and stuff. But I always try and acknowledge like the small gatherings, and I think now just because it is so available, there's like, I don't know, 12 different Pride events during the month of June just in Utah alone, and probably a few that I'm missing. And so because it's so available now, I find it very important to acknowledge that even just, those, I was gonna say a few short years ago, but that was 10 years ago in 2017. Yeah, it was happening, and whatever it looked like, whatever, that was community, that was gathering. And then like I said, like the queer elders who are not out in Carbon County, I will say for me, have been doing the work because I saw those folks when I was little. And it was unspoken, and it was, even sometimes still now, like I see you ladies, it's fine. But even just being there and being somewhat visible, somewhat steady, somewhat stable, has laid the path for me to be available. Like I said, like the only reason that I find myself under the spotlights, it's because I put myself there. I'm just a very like loud, whatever kind of person, but there's so many people that prop me up. Ty that was in the video, Joven that was in the, honestly everybody that was in the video has a part in like Cami is still a high school teacher and is working on doing things in the space of like a GSA, but is getting a ton of pushback from the school. Even our college that is there now, like they're not able to have a GSA group, but the Lavender Lighthouse has events and all those people are able to show up, and you know, so like there's all these different pockets and corners of like, we're just making it work. And I certainly don't do it alone. I just do it, I think, the most visibly. And I think part of that is because I was able to be here in, you know, I was so validated in my identity, especially once I opened Friar Tuck's and like the lesbians and trans men and non-binary folks. Cause like when I opened in 2015, I'm not gonna say there weren't other queer barbers, there certainly were, but none of them were saying, hey, queer community, I'm here and I'm here for you. I was the first one to do that in Salt Lake, and it just exploded. I mean, it was such a needed thing, and I got so much validation for that, and it gave me so much, it just filled my cup in a way that like now, I don't have that anymore, but like that light still sort of burns me forward, and so that's why I don't think I could be quieter about it if I did try it. It's not very fun, but so yeah, so there's like a lot of folks that are doing the work, and it's just happening in different ways and like smaller pockets.
Yeah, I love that. There's always many folks doing the work in different ways. Yeah, I wanted to talk more about queer barbershops. I feel like a lot of us can relate to a queer barbershop being almost a sacred space. And before I was out, I know I was finding like the queer haircutting salons in Salt Lake and like finding someone on the website that I was perceiving as queer and feeling really affirmed in that space. So yeah, I'm curious if you can reflect on that and the level of like storytelling, sometimes gossip, just like sharing of space and community.
Totally. So growing up in rural Utah, my mom, who is in the audience, hi cutie, shout out to my mom. She was a beautician. She had a salon in our house. She was a Mary Kay saleswoman. It was me, my mom, and my sister, and just all of the femininity and the feminine things in the salon and all this stuff. And I like was aware of that, and that just was like not my bag. And so I was going to salons to get my hair cut all of the time, and a friend of mine cut my hair short, but she did like a pixie. It was super, super cute, but just not quite what I wanted. And she was like, why don't you go to a barbershop? Like I have one I can recommend you. And I was like, oh. So I go to this barbershop, and it was sick. I mean, I got like my first fade and just chatting like with him about like sports and just whatever, you know? And I literally left that appointment, called my wife, said, what if I quit my job and went to barber school?
Oh my God.
And she was like, go for it. We weren't married yet, but, so I did that, and I went to a very traditional barber school. And when I say traditional, I mean misogynistic, and racist, and homophobic, and all of the things. And it was wild. Like, my instructor was like 90, and I'm just saying the craziest things. And you know, there was like 5 women, a sprinkle of some queer people, a sprinkle of some brown people. And I viewed toughing that out, which it wasn't that bad, but it was also just like, oh, like you would just hear things at 9 in the morning and you're like, whoa. But I thought, if I can take this knowledge that is passed down in these traditionally unavailable spaces to women, queer folks, brown folks, I'll take the knowledge and then I'll use it. Which like I can remember in school being told like haircuts being so gendered, like never cut round shapes on a man, never cut square shapes on a woman, like all this stuff. When I opened Friar Tuck's and had all of these folks that were like, hi, I would like you to affirm my gender, I'm like, great, I got all kinds of tools in my bag, but I'm using them in a way that like, rest in peace to my instructor, but I'm sure he wouldn't love what I'm doing with the information, but I bought the information, it's mine to do with what I want. So it was really in barber school where I saw like, oh, like, because even in barber school, like, I was being excluded. You know, as barber students, we would go to all these different barber shops like around Salt Lake City, and I wouldn't be spoken to. All the dudes would talk to all the dudes, and like, just wouldn't talk to me. Even when I opened my barbershop, and I would go to networking events with like my other barber friends, and I was the barbershop owner, all of the guys would be like, oh, hey man, like what barbershop do you own? And finally one time, like putting Jorge, like some guy was like, oh, what barbershop do you own? He's like, I just work at a barbershop. This is Kylee, and she owns, and you know, like, and I'm grateful for people that are in those spaces like that, but it was just that realization of like, okay, we've got to like, I'm building a different table. I don't want to make a longer table over here. I want to build a different table. And just seeing that opportunity, I knew that I was having that experience. I had been asked to leave a barbershop because we don't cut women's hair. This was like 2015, even though I was getting a men's haircut, whatever that means. And so building Friar Tuck's was genuinely out of my own realization of like, there's gotta be one other person that's having this uncomfortable feeling of being like, I don't wanna go to a salon, and I don't wanna have to like be treated like this in a barbershop. And that's really what Friar Tuck's was born out of. And 12 years, whatever later, like I'm super proud to say that it has met the mark in that space. I've been affirmed in that over and over again, having so many folks like so thankful and carrying that on to their next barber when they move to a different state or whatever, and talking about Friar Tuck's in that way. And that's something that I'm very proud of because, like I said, it was born out of like my own struggle to find that space, but then turning around and using the knowledge that I had. Like, I remember I did some workshops for the Utah Pride Center. I thought that I was doing workshops for trans men because I have PCOS and I've had facial hair my whole life. And I've been shaving since I was in high school, but I shaved my face the way that I was taught to shave my legs. Which, when I say that to men, they're like, oh no, because when I was in barber school, I learned like, you need to prep your face. It's a very delicate, sensitive thing. And like these dudes are like, yeah, duh, my dad taught me how to shave when I was 10. And I'm like, okay, well, I didn't have that experience. So when I started working and realizing that I had a lot of trans clients that were like having facial hair for the first time and not knowing how to do it, I said, well, I worked with the Utah Pride Center. I said, let's do some workshops and, you know, I'll give some tips and tricks. Well, I had several trans women attend that workshop wanting to know, like, hey, how do I get rid of my 5 o'clock shadow? I'm like, oh girl, I've got the tool just for you, you know? So once again, like taking that information that to me was born in this space that is traditionally unattainable to me or people like me, and using that. I mean, barbering is the second oldest profession, like documented profession in the world. Guess what the first one is? Sex work. Yes. Yeah, so it's the second oldest documented profession in the world, and so for decades and decades and generations it's been unavailable, and taking that information and giving it to my community felt like the least I could do.
Yeah, it's really incredible. Yeah, absolutely. I'm wondering if you can reflect on this year's theme a bit. Our festival theme is Troubling the Lines, which is inspired by this collection of poetry called Troubling the Line. We actually emailed with the editors, and they were excited for us to use the theme and also encouraged us to add the S and make lines plural. Okay, so my question is, thinking about this period we're in now with intensified fascism and rights of queer and trans people being questioned and taken away. And at this point, what lines need to be crossed or blurred or defended? What lines or pathways or directions or scripts need to be redrawn or reclaimed or rewound? And so if you have any thoughts on this theme and how it relates to your work.
Yeah, reclaim really hits, reclaiming the place that I was born, reclaiming spaces for women, all of that kind of hits. But what I really think of when I think of like troubling the lines is just that, like, when I moved to Hoper, I didn't think the country was headed back in this direction. I thought we were making a pivot another way, and I thought, oh, how lovely, I'll go live a soft, quiet life in a small town. And then, the fascism came back, and, well, I mean, it was never really gone, it was just died down a little bit, but it feels more, it does feel more aggressive than when I first moved there in 2021. And I'll talk to my mom sometimes and I'm just like, why did I move here? What was I thinking? And she'll remind me, things were different when you made the choice to move there and what you thought it was gonna be like and what you thought. And also, I knew that moving there, especially just with what I do for work and like the fact that my clientele would change. Up here, my clientele was, 99% like queer folks of any flavor, and the 1% was like cis straight dudes that were married to bisexual women at the very least, you know what I mean? Like, whereas now, that's just not the case. Like, the queers do come and they find me and they make up maybe 30% of my clientele, maybe. And the other 70% are a lot of folks that don't understand, some of them that don't care, some of them that think that they do care a lot. And I knew that part of my work in moving down there would be to be having those conversations. Living up here, it started to feel like I was like just spinning a wheel in the same arena as everybody else. I was just having conversations with people who already agreed with me all of the time. And I knew that would be something that I would do that would be kind of butting heads a little bit. And I do have one story that I kind of want to tell you because I'm really proud of it, and it's what keeps me doing it on the days that I'm just like, oh, this is a wild choice. So I was cutting this woman's hair, and she has a really short haircut, and her husband was there, and we were having a really great conversation, and he said something about, yeah, my wife's bisexual, I don't even care. And I was like, oh, wow. But again, the context of where I live and everything, I'm like, okay, yeah, cool. He's like, yeah, we really just want people to, be able to be who they are and live their truth and, all this stuff. He's like, until it starts to affect me. And I was like, what? Babe, when does it affect you? And he's like, it tripped him up a little bit that I would even question him on that, and he kind of mumbled and he started to talk about bathrooms. And I was like, okay, I see where we're going here. And we started to talk about that, and there is less safety for me in Carbon County, so I really have to pick and choose how I'm having these conversations, not just for the ability for my business to continue to go on, but just for my own personal safety. But I figure I'm in a good spot, so I kind of press back on him hard. I'm like, where somebody goes to the bathroom, he's like, well, I have a wife and a daughter, and I don't want them to be, attacked in the bathroom. And I'm like, okay, well, it sounds like you're concerned about somebody attacking somebody in a bathroom, which is a concern that any and all of us have, and that's something that, yes, we should be talking about. But you're targeting trans women in that conversation, and that's bananas. Anyway, we have this conversation, and about 4 minutes in, I've never had this happen, he stopped and he goes, I'm wrong on this.
Wow.
I wanted to get it written down, notarized. I was like, I'm going to need you to repeat that into the microphone. And it's stuff like that is the continued realization of especially in Carbon County, man, I'm gonna say rural folks get such a bad rap. I had friends up here, how are you gonna be able to live there among those people? I'm like, okay, chill, I'm those people. And so many folks just don't know. And they don't have the access to the information, or even just walking around in the world, they don't think that they're seeing queer people and businesses owned by queer people and stuff like that. And a lot of them, if you talk to them about it, they're just like, oh, I guess I was told one thing and I believed that, and I guess you're telling me that's not true, and okay. And for many of them also, I have found they're afraid to ask. They know that they might be wrong, but there is this fear that they're going to be canceled, whatever that means. Who's in charge of the cancel book, I don't know. But so they just won't ask, and they won't make those steps to change the information that they have. And I'm very careful in telling folks when I have these, because I open myself up for it. I mean, I'm doing stuff all over Carbon County and Helper where I'm talking about this kind of stuff, and I tell people, if you have questions, you come and ask me. And I also tell them, it is not the job of every queer person to help you understand. I'm making myself available, so if you're asking questions in good faith, don't come devil's advocate me, but if you're asking questions in good faith, I want to help you get this information, because otherwise, like, I genuinely had, he was an older guy, like 80s. He was against marriage equality because he thought that it would invalidate his. I said, babe, I don't want anything to do with your marriage. Congratulations, and I love that for you, but me having mine doesn't mean anything about you having yours. And it was a genuine belief that this gentleman had. And so being able to, so to me, when you say troubling the lines, I'm like, what? To me, that's what that is. It's like, somebody needs to be able to have those conversations in these spaces. And I don't think it's for everyone, like, especially for the most marginalized queer folks. Like, it is not their work, but it can be some of ours. And then also for me, it's like just existing, right? I'm not out there like throwing a pride parade every week. I will be on June 21st if you guys want to know. I'll give you more information. But I'm just like myself, right? Like, I'm just a person. Like, I'm married, I like basketball, I have pets, I volunteer for the food pantry, I support the local Little League baseball teams. And I think even just that existence, as out and visible as I am, has changed people's minds. Like, I've literally had people say, like, oh, like, you're just a person. I'm like, yeah, dude, what? It's almost like we've been saying that the whole time. But again, I want to take the time to like appreciate that and acknowledge it. I'm not gonna like give you a cookie for it or anything, like seeing my humanity, but I do see the value in just making space for that opportunity if somebody does want to come into that space, because it does make a difference. Like, I now have parents that, like, they have trans kids and they wouldn't have talked to anybody, because what are they going to talk to their coal mining coworkers about it? Probably not. But now they're coming and like asking me questions so that their 13-year-old can just be a 13-year-old. It's hard enough, like, don't ask your 13-year-old trans kid how to parent them. Come talk to me and I can give you some resources and we can, go over it together, stuff like that. And like I said, I've created opportunities for that, and it's super rewarding. And I think, to me, that's what troubling the lines means, is like literally being on that line and doing what you can do to, like, I don't know, blur it, extend it. I don't really know what we're doing with the lines, but we gotta get rid of them.
I think, we are so siloed in this day and age, especially with social media and the internet. And so really being neighbors to people who are different than us is a radical form of community and troubling the lines. And I think that's what we need as we weather this storm. I want to open it up to questions from the audience. I can bring you this microphone. Are there any thoughts out there?
Hi, Kylee. So,
Hi, Steve.
you have talked about how building the community has been visible for people in the community to find people. You've talked about individuals who may be outside the community learning, but are you seeing any change, especially positive change, in the political leadership, the business leadership, the religious or community organization leaderships in Carbon County and Helper, as you have had a more visible community and people actually get to know people who are different than them?
I think so. I think, because I'm a business owner in the community, like, I fly a pride flag in the window and other business owners are like, oh, I can do that. Again, like, we're on the ground right now. Like, we are, they're like, would that help? I'm like, yeah. Having the pride flag, especially very, very small town Main Street, I actually had a gentleman, I saw him drive by pretty fast and then just reversed back and pulled in, and he was on FaceTime with somebody, and I went outside to talk to him, and he's like, I'm sorry, I just had to stop. He's like, he's a black gay man. He was from San Francisco, but he was retiring to Detroit, so he was kind of driving there. And his family, he was on the phone with his sister because his family had told him, when you are in rural spaces, especially rural Utah, Montana, whatever, you be on the phone with us. So he was literally on the phone with his sister, happened to see the pride flag, wanted to show her, hey, it's all right some places, And then I've had other business, I've told that story, and I've had other business owners go would that be valuable? And it's like, yes. Same for, I've done a little bit of like marketing work and stuff with the Carbon County Democrats. And when I was growing up in Carbon County, it was a Democratic stronghold. I mean, that was what I knew. It's not anymore at all. And it's, they're turning their wheels again too. And even in that space, you know, having like the older, like old school Carbon County Democrats, there's a guy now that shows up in rainbow suspenders. He's like in his late, and you know, and he's just like, I'm just so glad that you're here and we can ask you questions and are we doing the right thing? And I'm usually pretty like, listen, I'm not the spokesperson, I'm not in charge of anything, but like, yes, keep asking these questions, keep, you know, seeing what you can do. So again, it's like just the little bit of visibility that we have and the little conversations that we do have sparks these conversations in these other communities where it's like, maybe it's not necessarily queer-owned businesses, but like the allies of queer folks, of disabled folks, of people of color, like we're all kind of one umbrella. And so even those folks that are providing services for that, they see like, oh, we can be louder about it? I'm like, yeah, babes. Because it's just like a very traditional mindset of like, oh, you don't talk about politics. I'm like, okay, well, me being gay isn't political to me. It's political to you, but it's not political to me, so I'll keep talking about it. And I don't think I'm giving anybody that permission, but just the way that I live is maybe giving a little bit of empowerment of like, oh, I don't have to ask, I can do that too. And so just seeing, and then yeah, like I'll have other business leaders come to me like, hey, what do you think about this? Like, do you think Carbon County needs, like, yeah, yes, to everything, let's do it. So yeah, it's definitely slower trickles than, I think here I almost got like overwhelmed with it. Whoa, there's like too much that we can do, which is great, and I love that for us. But being able to compartmentalize it a little bit and see those little changes, but the roots get a lot deeper when they're smaller. Thanks.
Other questions from the audience?
Sorry. I had a similar question. I don't really, in a school teacher, I don't need my question is very similar because the population of Helper, it seems there's a huge influx of young artists and younger people who are buying homes in Helper and in Carbon County. And I wonder if you've seen that move the needle at all. That was one of the reasons we moved to Carbon County, because we loved the town and how accepting it was for a rural town. And so I'm wondering if you have noticed with younger people moving in, has that moved the needle to make people more accepting of the queer community?
Yeah, I think so. Especially because like with younger folks, like I love it because for them it's just like not an option to not be an asshole. So for them they just come in with that attitude of like, no, we're just treating everybody with basic decency and respect. And that has been a radical thing for some of the more long-term locals. But I think even that, I mean, Helper itself was very radical when it was in its heyday. And again, you know, years of like mines being closed down and economy in a downturn and all that kind of stuff has changed it. But the breadth of that is still there. So as these younger folks are coming in, especially the artists, it does. I even noticed, like, I have big giant windows in my barbershop and I'm right on Main Street, and I even just noticed, like, from the 5 years ago when I first moved there, the way that people walk down the street on Helper Main Street is a little bit different, a little bit louder, a little bit, you know, like Rae had mentioned earlier, like, seeing people that you perceive to be queer, like flagging is a very real thing, and it is alive and well in Carbon County, and I do think that I see it more now than when I first moved there 5 years ago, for sure. What's wild to me, like I have a good handful of like young trans high school men that are boys, whatever, they're turning into men. They're like graduating on Tuesday and I'm having some feelings about it. But like, you know, when I tell folks, I'm like, yeah, there's just a bunch of trans teenagers just running around here playing Magic the Gathering and like, you know, working at the fast food places, and it's like, it's not this big radical thing, and just existing is so radical, and yeah, I love them.
We have time for one more thought. Great, I can come around here.
Hi, I'm not Carbon County, but you were talking a bit about like how to educate people and how to be yourself loudly while also like conserving your own energy and your own sense of self. I'm genderqueer and I'm an educator. I work with kids and adults, and so I end up having a lot of these conversations of like, yes, this is what it is, and this is what that is, and then how do you maintain that boundary for yourself, but also be like an open mentor and like a trusted source, you know?
Mm-hmm. I usually lead with my boundary, to be honest with you, which to me, I feel more comfortable holding a boundary when I know that that expectation is already there. Like, I won't cheat myself from holding the boundary if I know that they know my boundary. And then we kind of just started it. The Lavender Lighthouse has a free little library upstairs in my barbershop. So now when things get down a really winding road, I'm like, let me refer you to some literature that I have upstairs if you could do a little reading on your own. But yeah, I think for me it's been just leading with my own boundaries so that I do feel safe enough to say, okay. And like, I'll say this too, you know, I came out when I was in high school in like 2005. I was legitimately arguing with like a class of 32 and my teacher about like don't ask, don't tell, or Massachusetts was heading into like same-sex marriage. And I was literally like 17 years old, like, no, I should have rights as a person, I think. And I honestly think that has kind of calloused me. I did that kind of stuff for like 10 years where I was trying to like change people's mind and validate my humanity and stuff like that. I don't do that anymore because like I get so much of it from my own community that now like I am calloused to like, if they're really trying to play devil's advocate, I'll just shut it down. Like nobody has time for that. So yeah, just leading with my boundaries and just knowing like I earned them. Like I don't have to do this for anybody. I do it because I choose to. I see the value in it, but it's a choice that I make, and if I'm done making that choice, I'll be done.
Okay, to close us out, Kylee, I'm wondering if you can share what you're excited about. I selfishly want to know what you think the biggest, hottest queer haircut will be this summer, and if there's anything you're excited about coming up for community, for Pride and Helper.
Totally. I'll take the haircut first. Buzz bowl cuts. I've been doing so many buzz cuts in the last 3 weeks. It's been kind of wild. And then like the really like blunt and bold, like not faded fade. So I think that's kind of coming back. I think like for the last couple of years, the queers have really been into like mullets and shaggy and fluffy. And I think we're like going back to like a shorter vibe. So yeah, buzz bowl cut. And then yeah, I totally want to shout out. So if anybody, I'm gonna do a shameless plug here, but if anybody has an Instagram, Lavender Lighthouse Project on Instagram, that's where I kind of post all of the events, and we try to get together every couple of months and just do like arts and crafts or something like that, where we're just trying to get in the same room together and recognize each other's faces so that when we're at Walmart together, we're like, yes, I see you. Like, we don't have to be friends all the time, we don't have to hang out all the time, but we do need to like know each other. The biggest thing that I'm excited about right now is Pride. I'm super, super happy and excited that we're doing it. So we are going to be showing on Saturday, June 20th at 7 p.m. at the Rio Theater. We're going to be showing Tu Wong Fu, Thanks for Everything, Julie Newmar, which I watched that all the time as a kid. And obviously did not clock a ton. I mean, I clocked enough of it, but I just recently rented it from my local library and watched it again. And sometimes it's scary to watch stuff that came out in 1993. And I'm like, ooh, are they gonna say something? Like, where's this gonna, you don't know. You guys, it slaps. It's so good. Please go watch it again if you haven't. So we are gonna be showing that, which is just like super relevant in our small town. We're also gonna be showing the Be Where You Are film and kind of reiterating the Lavender Lighthouse mission. And then the next day, which is Sunday, we're going to be having a festival in our Main Street Park from 11 to 3. It's not your traditional festival in like having a bunch of like vendors and stuff like that. We have a few performances on our stage. We have like an award-winning drag queen. We have Helper's Poet Laureate that's going to share a poem. Cami Carlson, who was in the film, she writes children's books, and she just released a new one, so she's going to read her new children's book. But mostly what we're doing at Pride is sharing and gathering and then sharing resources. So those of us on the Pride Planning Committee are kind of reaching out to all of our folks, I'll be reaching out to you soon, about like, what do you have to offer the queer community in Utah, and do you have a takeaway kind of like pamphlet, flyer? Don't give me a QR code, we are tangible things that we can, and obviously, sustainability in mind, but it is going to be a feast of resources for folks, legal resources. We're going to have a clothing market and free clothing market, and somebody that's going to be there helping people take measurements, because if you have a body like mine but you're trying to shop in the men's section, or if you've only been shopping in the men's section and now you're trying to buy a dress and you're like, what is a size 8? Girl, we don't even know what a size 8 is, okay? So things like that, we're really working to kind of meet those moments of, again, just like at the bottom resources that people might need, and kind of share those, and then just kind of share a community together. Having some food, we have an amazing food vendor, Angel's Tacos, who's gonna be there. He is a Helper staple. So yeah, it's going to be a very quaint Pride Festival, but we're really, really excited about it. And honestly, we were in our planning meeting the other week, and I think I'm the most excited about the movie on Saturday night. It's really good for, again, just being in a rural community and realizing that it's still relevant. We're still having these conversations today, and we'll probably have them in another 20 years. So.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Kylee. Will you all join me in a round of applause? Thank you, everybody.